Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, our topic is Youth and National Development, Promises and Perils. The background of this topic tonight is what has been happening to the youth. So we want to discuss the challenges facing youth, their promises, and what can be done about it. Of late, we saw in Douala that some youth were killed by the state police. We also know that the ones that are singing and chanting behind politicians, most of them are in their 60s and above, are the youth. The youth are also the ones mainly suffering from drug addictions and living in the graveyards. They are the ones in the school system President Sirleaf described as a mess. They are also the victims, mainly of rape. We also saw that the youth are the ones at the university campuses. Just this week, we saw them blocking roads and throwing stones at police. So the youth make up a vast majority of the population in Liberia and even in Africa. That's why Africa is termed the youngest continent in the world. So tonight, we're going to be looking at our youth and national development. What are the promises and what are the perils? With me to discuss this, I have our political analyst, Mr. Wilmont Cooney, that's our chief political analyst, who is joining us this time from the nation's capital, Monrovia. Mr. Cooney, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right. Mr. Cooney is joining us, as I said, from Monrovia. We also have Mr. Mohammed Sharif, who is our political analyst, joining us from the city of Philadelphia. Mr. Sharif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Good to be here, Dennis.
We also have our policy analyst, Mrs. Carl Famulin, who's joining us from Atlanta. Carl, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
It's good to be here.
Appearing for the second time on Tough Talking Thursday is Mr. Kalebo Gonglo. Mr. Gonglo is a former official of government of Liberia. Mr. Gonglo, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We're glad to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We also have Leo Johnson, who's going to be joining us in a few minutes. So welcome to the show. If you're just joining, please share the show, invite a friend, and let's talk about the youth. Mr. Cooney, how is it there in Monrovia? I know you've gone there quite recently. How is it, and how the youth of Monrovia?
Well, Monrovia is always the way it has been. It's very peaceful. Many of the youth I see here going about their normal activities, going to school, selling in the market, doing different things to make ends meet, to meet the challenges of life here on the ground.
Thank you. At the beginning of the show, I talked about the youth that were shot and killed by state police in Douala. Mr. Cooney disagree with that. We also see that most of the time, as I said, the youth are the ones involved in political activities, chanting and singing behind politicians. We also see those who are living in the graveyard that our society has termed as zogos are mainly the youth. So it looks to me that the youth are getting the shorthand of the harsh realities going on in Liberia. Let me go around the room, and also the youth are the ones in the schools that President Sirleaf said were a mess. If we look at our national budget, those ministries that cater to the youth, like Ministry of Youth and Sports, Ministry of Education, they have the budgetary appropriation is not much. So you could see that the youth, maybe I'm wrong, but they are not the priority of government based on the government budget. Let me go around the room and let's briefly start with the youth of Monrovia. What is your own assessment when it comes to the youth of Liberia? And by the way, according to our Liberian system, youth is anyone from ages 15 to 35. That is considered youth. Mr. Gonglo, what's your general assessment, briefly, just for a minute or two, about the youth of Liberia?
Well, before I make my comment on that, quick comment on your intro. I think the situation in Douala, it's a symptom of what actually I would say we expect to be worse than that. It's a symptom of a situation that should be worse than that. Because if you take the situation of youth in Liberia or maybe in West Africa collectively, they are in a dire situation. They are in a situation that don't have better option. So we expect even West African countries to be more violent when you look at the statistics of the precarious employment situation that you find themselves in most West African countries. So in the case of Liberia is no exception. As you go on this discussion, I may point some statistics to you since I have better understanding of the labor market situation. Liberia actually has low unemployment rate, and that is also the same. It's also true for young people, But we can expand on this further. But I think what happened in Douala um, was a small situation. It was a small in terms of magnitude. It's small because we expect worse than that to be happening every single day in Liberia, given the situation that you found themselves in.
Thank you. Let me go to call.
Yes, so I think we should expand a little bit on the definition of youth and what the world thinks youth is. I think that's really important as we talk about what youth is for Liberia. The United Nations has a non-prejudicial, meaning that they're doing it based on statistics and without prejudice to any country that may not have their definition fall into these guidelines. So the UN definition of youth is 15 to 25. I'm sorry, to 24. And then anyone 25 and older is no longer considered youth. You're just an adult. And then if you're younger than 15, you're a child. And so, and this is statistically for countries that have much older populations than Liberia. So in a country like Liberia, where over 40% of the population is below the age of 15. So we have a country that's not only youthful, but we have a country where 40% of the population are actual children under the age of 15. So you would think, that would mean that our youth radar would be lower, right? So most of the population is very young, and you have very few people that are older. You would think that, the youth aspect of it would fall even lower than what the UN statistics are. But for some reason, we're the complete opposite. That in and of itself, I think, is telling and a bit problematic, because what it's saying to the world is that it takes much longer for a Liberian person to mature than it does for the average person on the planet, right? So if it only takes you 25 years to mature, it takes us 35 years. And so a 35-year-old man in Liberia is equivalent to a 24-year-old man in another country. And that's really not a good thing. For us to structure our range that way. So clearly, by the time men in Liberia are 35, most of them are married, or if not married, they have children, they have families. So it just doesn't really make sense. Nobody's starting their life at 35 years old in Liberia and just starting to have children at that age in Liberia. So I'm confused by the age range, and I think it's symptomatic of many other problems that we have.
Right. That's an interesting way to look at it, Cole, but I disagree that the youth range being 15 to 35, it means that a 24-year-old in China or Europe is equivalent to a 35-year-old. It's just a range, right? So, and I was fortunate to interview the Deputy Minister for Youth and Sport, Mr. Isaac Doe, who said that because of the war, that many things were destroyed, and those who were in the youthful population at that time did not enjoy the benefits of being a youth. So after the war, they were able to expand the age range to 35, so that those who did not enjoy those years can still enjoy them. It didn't really make much sense to me, but that's he said that was the reason behind expanding this to age 35. Let me go to Mr. Sharif. What's your impression, the youth of Liberia?
First, thank you, Dennis, and I want to welcome my Comrade Calabo Gonglo from Luke's and Tenebris.
Thank you.
So, Dennis, before I jump into this topic, if you will indulge, I want to commend you for your report from the ANC Global Convention held in Charlotte, North Carolina. I learned a lot of different things just from your reporting, so I want to commend you for that. One of the things that jumped out is that it's doing the same thing over and again, and I'm very shocked and surprised that Mr. Cummins, who was there that night, has not done anything to correct some of the issues. One of the things another thing that came out of that was that the MC for that night, I don't know based on what criteria he was chosen, because this is a man who has made bigoted comment about a Mandingo man, even though this Mandingo man said that his mom, forget mom being gay or whatever, or down a down person or whatever, but the man said, "I am a Liberian. I was born in Nimba County." So when he said that, Reverend Charles Martin, because I looked at the whole video, you referenced it, so I went back and looked at the entire video, and he lost his senses. Reverend Martin lost his mind, and he said, "You're not a Liberian. Show me your birth certificate." So he became a birther, and he demeaned this man on another channel, on another talk show, and he demeaned this fella. He requested for his birth certificate, and yeah, and the guy, Mike Jabate, had to apologize to him. It was only then that Reverend Charles Martin calmed down. The only thing I can say, so what is he doing with the ANC right now? At the very least, there should have been an apology issued by the ANC to Mike Jabate. That has not happened. Maybe Cummins wasn't aware of the comment, but your reporting, Dennis, has shown to everybody that this is someone, the person you picked to be your MC, you put on that podium that night, is someone who has made a bigoted comment against a Liberian citizen. He said that this man looked like a Guinean. He sounded like a Guinean. And this is this is a disgrace. It's an insult to the good and decent people of Guinea. So what if he's a Guinean? Doesn't matter. And so, the fact that Cummins hasn't done anything, I'm flabbergasted that nothing has been done. So all I can say is, beware of false preachers. The Bible in the book of Matthew talk about false prophets. He might be a false prophet. So I'm going to leave it at that. So going to the youth of Liberia, there's a lot that can be done. This is part of a whole host of problems that we can talk about in Liberia. I always say that if you try to put all of the problems of Liberia into one room, is going to overflow a whole room. It's so multifaceted, so many different things that's going on in Liberia. Obviously, the problem with the youth is really one of them. There are not many opportunities for young people. You talk about the University of Liberia. Right now, the University of Liberia, where Comrade Gonglo and I went to school, they shut down right now. The teachers are on strike. The bathrooms are, you can't go into the bathroom now. I understand. The teachers aren't getting paid. And so for about 3 semesters, some of the teachers haven't gotten paid. And what do you expect in a country that is not prioritizing education, the empowerment of the young people? So it is my hope that, this government will wake up. The problem did not start with this government, I must admit. This is an age-old problem. However, they are in authority now, and they need to wake up and address some of these issues.
Thank you. Mr. Coney, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
All right. Mr. Coney, you even saw the youth, most of the time, those are the ones Mr. President Tubber referred to as the precious jewels. Fast forward to, and then I think you saw that because you became of age during the Tubber regime. So you saw how the youth, the way we look at the youth, and before I come to you for your comment, is we see that everywhere we say the youth are the future. The youth is their future leaders. If you look at Liberia and look at the youth population, can you safely say that the youth actually are ready and prepared to be our future leaders? What do you think of the youth? You are right there on the ground.
Well, whether we see them prepare or not, eventually they will be our leaders, just like the way we are today. At one point, we were youth.
We lost Mr. Kunin there. Let's go around the room and talk about, I mean, maybe this is something that a lot of people know. Let me start with Mr. Gonglo, who has worked with the labor ministry and know all these statistics. What is the role of the youth in a society like Liberia? What do we expect of the youth, and why is the youth population so important?
Well, thank you, Dennis. Like any country, like the United States, any country in the world, the youth is actually the bearer of economic growth. Because if a country invests in quality skill training for the young people, at a younger age, they are able to put in more hours to work in our country, and they are able to, help the country to grow its GDP, engage in more economic activities. Unlike Liberia, we have not invested in quality education and quality skill training for the young people. So we are not getting the best out of the economic potential. So you go waterside, you found too many young people forced into involuntary self-employment situation. We call them Yanabo, we call them whatever name. You go in Douala market, real life market, you find young girls forced into involuntary self-employment situation. It's because the country has not invested, in quality skill training and quality education. As a result, the country, Liberia, is even losing because we are not making the best out of the economic potential of the young people. They're not even paying taxes for all of these shadow economic activities they are involved in, because the activities, the sector in which they are employed in or they are engaged in economic activities are not mainstream economic activities. So we don't even count for that. We don't even account for that. They are in the informal sector, and but that explains why Liberian economy is part of the reason why Liberian economy is not even growing, because we're not getting much out of the young people. When they are young and able to work long hours, they lack the skill to do better job, to do high income. Even those who get job get paid little money because they lack the requisite skill for employer to pay them more money. So then if they have to pay income tax, is low. That income tax is on the low salary they get. So the situation in Liberia is such that I would say it's not just putting the blame maybe on the young people, but the government actually has a primary role, and the government has failed in that. Not President, we are not President Salib, they all have contributed to that. But historically, past government contributed to this. Like I was telling one of my colleagues a few weeks ago, and I've said it many times, Liberia as a country has invested in illiteracy. And part of the problem we are having today with precarious employment, self-employment, bulk of our young people in self-employment, having low skill, they found it difficult to get better job, is because the country invested in poor quality education, poor skill training. So we are reaping what we sow. That's what we, and that explains, in fact, it's a blessing that Liberia is not even having higher crime rate in Philadelphia or many countries in the Western world. Because these young people are forced in a situation, it's like their bikes are on the wall and they could do anything. They could engage in any activities. I have worked with many of these young people. I have been in many of the young, some of the ghetto where they go. I don't smoke, I don't drink, but out of interest, out of curiosity, I've gone to many places in Monrovia and I've seen young people live. It's a situation that was entrusted upon them by the failure of the national government. Another factor, before I just give the floor to you.
Quickly.
Part of the thing is that the way we do development planning in Liberia, we plan around population. We don't plan ahead. So you see a large rural urban migration. So the challenge that rural urban migration creates is that many of the young people, men and women that are coming from the villages, from the rural part, they come with no skill. When they get in Monrovia, their backs are on the wall. They have to find something to do in Monrovia to live. So you find it in West Point, in Solihuan, in Negro in marketplaces. Many places that you don't think somebody who is a natural born Liberian should be living in such condition, given the wealth of the country. But it's because our country does not plan. We plan around the population. So because people come to Monrovia, so we try to put facility in Monrovia. And one last statistics is, check the record. The Ministry of Education in the last 40 years has not built any new high school in Monrovia. All of the school in Monrovia, the high school, bulk of them, new high schools are private schools. The NCSS school system, that's a public school, and you have PCS and the other ones, outside in other borough, they are just not many. They can't even cope with the demand of the young people to go to school in Monrovia. So that's why private schools are taking advantage of it.
Thank you for that statistic, because and they're going down, right? Because Central High is now closed.
Yeah.
So instead of going up, they're going down. Mr. Cooney, you were saying something when you went off. So let me come back to you, sir.
Yeah, no, look, most of the things said about the youth here, I totally in agreement. There are very serious challenges that Liberian youth are confronted with historically and today. You recall, I think it was D12 way back in 1946 that won the Liberian nation, that no society could ever be serious to develop its people, to develop democracy without making a substantial investment in educating its people. Basically, you cannot develop a country without education. We didn't pay attention to that. The authorities of the time didn't pay attention to that. We fast forward to William R. Tugboat that declared war on ignorance, disease, and poverty. And we still didn't pay attention to that as a country. And then even at my own graduation, when Vice President Monimba re-quoted a quote that if you think education is expensive for ignorance, we still, as a nation, did not rise up to that challenge. So there is this huge deficit in youth investment in our country. And the youth are struggling daily. I mean, you see them all over here in Monrovia, especially engaging in activities that are really less productive, selling plastic bags.
Oh, we lost him.
There was a story that one of them was selling 3 chewing gums. I don't know what you're going to get out of selling 3 chewing gums.
They have no option.
Carl, let me go to you. Let me start with you on this question as to the most important challenges facing the youth population in Liberia today.
So I hear people talk about, us having, people have us having a low unemployment rate. So, defining employment as just having something to do. Petty traders, for the most part, as far as, I'm concerned, as far as any type of living wage, being able to earn enough to be able to survive, that's not gainful employment. And a lot of countries struggle with people with low skills. The biggest problem in Liberia is that there's not any type of manufacturing or any jobs for people to do. These same people with very low skills go to a different country, an advanced country like the United States, they're able to get employed and earn living wages and be able to take care of themselves, even if they're illiterate. You've got illiterate people in the United States that are able to earn an income, be able to work and feed themselves and their children. So it is partly because, of course, we don't have a huge population of people with technical skills. But we do have, quite a few people walking around in Liberia with degrees that are jobless. So it's not that people aren't qualified for the jobs that exist, it's that there's just no jobs. There's no jobs. I know people who have graduated from the University of Liberia Law School that don't have jobs. You come out of Arthur Grimes, you're not employed, you're looking for someone to apprentice under. You're coming out of Stella Marie, you don't have a job, you're coming out of nursing school, you're hustling for a job. I mean, it's really a problem if we don't have a way to absorb the population as they get more mature. Earlier, when I said that the equivalent, so this thing we call youth, it's not just a arbitrary category. So when we talk about youth, we're talking about a period of maturing, of developing, right? So you do learn your entire life. If you're lucky until you die, you will continue to learn and grow. But there's a period of adolescent development, which means you're not a fully independent person. So if you're not fully independent, you're a youth. This means this is the time that you're partially under the guidance of someone else. And you're expected to, at that time, be either in university, be doing something to try to prepare yourself to stand on your own feet. If global statistics say that period of development ends at 24, and we're in Liberia saying it's 35, then in fact we are equating a 35-year-old person in Liberia to a 24-year-old person in the United States. That is a problem for the society. If we're taking that long, saying that a person has that much time to develop themselves and be able to be gainfully employed, you end up with much older people doing things like running for office and taking responsibilities for things. It gives people, it puts more of a burden on society. The truth of the matter is, the reason I believe that the youth population is stretched out so far is because of the lack of opportunity for people to be able to stand up on their own and take care of themselves. All of us on this panel, just my father's generation, my father was employed, gainfully employed right out of high school. Right out of high school, he was able to get a job. 18 years old, he was working for Lamco. My father was able to go and work for immigration. He was able to go to college. He was able to do all of these things, take care of his family, build a house, and do all of this. And he was killed at the age of 35. So he was a man taking care of himself and many other people, and many Liberians were this way, if you look back at our parents' generation. So I think some of this is a bit strange that we're looking at youth as being as old as they are, because many of our parents were not, considered children at 35 years old. That's just, or even 30 years old. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to point out is The most important challenge for us as Liberian people is to invest in human capital. This is for children, this is for youth, and this is also, this I would also say applies to post-youth, adulthood as well. We're not investing in human beings enough. There's a lot of capital flight because of it. So a lot of the people that are prepared and able to drive the economy escape. They leave the country because there's no opportunities. So those who are left behind fall further behind because there's the best and the brightest always find an escape route. So it's just a compound problem that's just, you know, snowballing out of control. I was reading an article that was saying countries with the highest statistics of what they call brain drain, meaning the most educated people in the country have left. Liberia was like #2 in the world.
Wow.
We haven't been at war for 14, 15 years. We've been stable. And Liberia is like #2 when it comes to brain drain. And that by itself answers all the questions about what's wrong with Liberia. If people run away from the country as soon as they're able to do something productive and take their productivity to another country, of course Liberia is going to suffer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sharif.
Yeah.
Let's talk about challenges facing the youth.
So there are multiple challenges. There are lots of challenges. It's almost uncountable number of challenges. So I will say that there was a period in Liberia, and I think Cole touched on something very illuminating for all of us when she talked about her father, who was able to be a man, you know, at a very young age, uh, finished school and went to work for Lamco and started a family as a very young man. Um, you don't see that now. And I think part of the reason is that we've gone through lots of turmoil. Dennis, think about what happened in 1980. Think about where we were or where the nation was, you know, perhaps, you know, even before the 80s. Um, there was a time that, you know, there were promises. Then the nation went through this sort of political instability for a long time. And Gonglo will tell you, even at the university, shortly before the war, there was this sort of clamp down on our right to associate, to carry out political activities. I remember one year when the C.H. Dual High School was burnt down in Bombing Hills. Whether that was manufactured by the administration or whatever happened, but it was blamed on students of the C.H. Dual High School in Topmanburg. And so as a result, the government banned student politics throughout the country. So we saw the University of Liberia at the time as a laboratory for the exercise of our political rights, where we all, some of us, you know, I really, a lot of the writing that I would do later on, I didn't learn them from the classroom. It was from these leaflets, right? It was from these writings that you know, the guys that I looked up to, the Louis Brown, ACT faculty, Mobutu Nyepan, Duba Nyan, guys like that, you know, that I will, you know, listen to, you know, that I will read their writings and so on and so forth. So when we didn't have that, it was a big blow as a young person. So now our options then were limited now to what we can get from just under the Palava hut, right? and what we can get from our classroom. So you go from there to the Civil War, where hundreds of thousands of Liberians, tens of thousands of young people
Yeah.
fled the country. Thousands and thousands more died or became part of the war effort, became part of the war, became part of the destruction because they were conscripted in these services. So Liberia and where we are now uh, is a result of some of those things that have happened. So how do we get out of this? This is a challenge that any government post-war should have, you know, should have planned for. I don't know if there has been proper planning. I don't know, and I don't think so. Certainly now, I don't think it's even on the agenda of this administration. I think it needs to be. And I continue to say, you know, it didn't start with them. That being said, does not necessarily mean that they can't do anything about it. They have an opportunity, they have a unique opportunity, and now is the time. We're talking about, Gonglo just mentioned, there has not been any new buildings, new construction of new schools. I think he said for the last 40 years. So yeah, I think he said 40 years. So you have to go back to William R. Tolbert. That's how far that is, because 40 years will take us back to the Tolbert era. That's how far that is. That is not acceptable in Liberia. And on this platform, on this show, Cole always talk about, human capacity building. So you have to build a human capacity. When we talk about how the Liberians vote, oh, but who voted for these people? Who's voting for them? Because of the fact that people who are going out there to vote, I don't think they're making informed decisions because of the fact that, I will argue, the limited education,
Yeah.
to be able to decide if this person stands for principle.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Gonglo on the challenges, and then we can.
Yeah. So let me just comment quickly on before I make my say anything for that. Let me just quickly comment on what Carl was saying. On the question of the unemployment issue in developing countries. I happen to have worked for labor ministry, not just the fact that I work, but my background is in statistics. So I know it's a very big issue. Not just with what Carl is saying on the stage. When I work in government, I remember when we did the first labor force survey for Liberia, and we said the unemployment rate at the time was 3.7%. President said he actually refused to endorse that. She said, "You want me to be killed? That hey, I'm manufacturing this norm. I can't accept that, But on a serious note, just the reason why the United Nations will say the definition of youth is between the 15 to 24, you have to have for international comparability. Other countries may say to that level for that, but when the UN try to write a report to compare the situation of youth across the country, they will use this range. That's what they will use. Other countries may have other things that they consider unique to them, but they will use this range. And so in terms of unemployment situation in developing countries, I mean, don't take it from me. Even on your computer, just Google unemployment rate for Sierra Leone, for Ghana. I think Ghana is 4.5%. I think Liberia is 2.7%. Or Sierra Leone is 4.6%. I think Ivory Coast is 3 point also, and I think 3.5%. So, and you go to Nigeria, you find it. The reason is, like, you and I live in the United States. If you get unemployed, you have social safety network. You get some sort of assistance. If you are working, you get unemployment check. Even for some situations, we get that. We don't have that social safety network in Liberia in terms of from the public sector. So when people come, like the situation are narrated, when these young people, or even those in Monrovia, who are largely not working, they have to sell plastic or any other thing.
Mr.
Because,
Gonglo, let me interrupt you for a minute because you were saying these numbers, unemployment 3%, to the average person you will laugh, right? But because the economists say to be unemployed, to be considered unemployed, you must actively be looking for work. So
yeah,
you were working, now you are out of job and you are actively looking for work.
yeah,
So you are considered unemployed. But
yeah.
for us in Liberia, I mean, if you're in Greenville, I mean, which way you're going to look for? So that's why people don't, that's
You
why,
can, Dennis, you can even have discouraged unemployed worker, they're tired looking for a job because they can't
yeah.
find it. So they
So
now
they
actually,
fall off that unemployment list. That's
yeah,
why you will have
can be part of
Liberia
that.
unemployment to be 3%. But
Yeah.
actually, it should be the other way around.
No,
Employment should be 3%.
so what happened is in most developing countries, most countries in Africa and Asia and Latin, and the Caribbean, bulk of their citizens are working in precarious employment, in what we say involuntary employment. They didn't choose it. The situation chose them. They just have to do it because they need to live. So it is that kind of employment. When we did a work in Liberia in 2010, those who were employed in Liberia, the percentage of them, 78 point, I believe, 3%. Those who are job. That's the population that are working in involuntary employment. So you can see that bulk of the country was doing this all non-sustainable job. When they get malaria, they lose income for that day because you only get income if you go to sell or you engage in activities. But that's what I want to just clarify. So maybe call who may have doubt on this can just understand this, because the definition is meant so they can compare other countries with each.
Right. I think we're also leaving out the understanding of underemployment, right? So I'm not saying that I understand that if people are not looking for work, they're not going to be considered statistically unemployed. That's obvious. What I'm mainly talking about is underemployment and people not being in a position to earn a living wage to be able to meet their needs. So if you're in the streets hustling, selling plastic, whether or not that's considered statistical employment or not, the reality of it is that's gross underemployment and it doesn't meet anyone's needs. So people are living in abject poverty and supposedly employed. So, and some people actually earn no income doing their hustle.
It's true. It's true.
And so employment, when we use this word, we need to really define it and really break down what we're talking about. When we say 3% unemployment, we're talking about probably invalids that are, bedridden, because everyone who wakes up in the morning is hustling, trying to look for something to eat.
Yeah.
So majority of the population, I'd like to see how many people are actually not underemployed and actually able to earn a living wage in Liberia. I think that would be very disturbing if we actually did a study on that.
No,
Thank you.
I mean, actually, it's
So
just that
Mr. Gonglo,
this forum is not for that. So we're not going to
Mhm.
focus on that. But it's a whole lot of statistics. It's a whole lot of things.
Mhm.
We can go
yeah,
into
so let's go to the
humanity.
challenges, Mr. Gonglo, so we can.
So part of the challenges, and I'd like to just expand on this little bit, is if you look at you can Google this, the share of urbanization in Liberia is alarming. If we're going to grow our economy and get the young people, more people to work, we need to invest in rural community. Even attempt to invest in agriculture is going to be a failure because over 60% of the Liberian population live now in urban area. No, I mean, you can Google this. Is over 60% of Liberian population now live in urban area. So that means we are depopulating the rural area where agricultural activity is supposed to take place. So we have many miles now in the city, in urban area to feed, and they can't go to make farm. All that add to the pressure that is facing the Liberian youth. And how the government will address that, it will take a serious government to do it. And I don't think that we are administration is prepared for that. The other thing I want to mention is the University of Liberia student situation. Like we are say the president, I was in Liberia actually when they declared this free education. I was actually a contractor at the Ministry of Finance at the time. It didn't make sense to me. It was, I would say, what? Are you guys say Tabata? No, I mean, saying it's a crew, man, it was a Tabata for me. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, say it right.
What, Tabata?
Yeah.
So y'all booking me, my fellow Ghana person can't say it either.
Okay, so it makes sense to me. I was teaching at the university at the time. I went whole semester without a single ream of paper being given to me. When I go to the Department of Mathematics, when I go to the chair, he said, we've not received supply because it's free education. It's free for all. No chalk, no stationery. And because I was working as a contractor, I was earning good income. I would buy stationery, I would print student test paper in my office and buy my chalk, get a whiteboard marker and go on Fender campus to teach in the Department of Mathematics. That's what I would go to. And that was the situation across all departments. You will not do that. So what the government is doing is similar to what past government did by disinvesting in education. What we are is doing is not investing in education. They are actually dampening the future of the young people who are relying on them to keep them in power. And the reason they do that, and those who came before them did also disinvest in education to have broad masses of the people misinformed, miseducated, poorly educated, so they can believe anything. And that's so it is a calculate, it's not just out of ignorance. Particular declaration of free education in public school is by design.
Yeah.
And the government intends to reap that benefit.
You really think the government intention there is bad? They want to keep the population down, or they don't know what they're doing?
I think it's disastrous. I would say, if I'm allowed to say, it's a crime against humanity.
Of course.
Because they are actually taking away the future of many young people.
Of course.
Talking about the future of many young people, and I think it was Carl who made that point, because we see that at the moment, the average age of an African president is 62 years old. In Liberia, besides the sitting president, the front runners when it comes to being president of Liberia are in their 60s. And the people that fight tooth and nail to get them to power are the young people. So when you say it is by design, I'm here thinking, well, if the youth population to be youth is considered from 15 to 35, so you are still, youth. So you really shouldn't be aspiring if you are in a political party like the ANC, the UP, or the CDC, or well, CDC is incumbent, so they may not have, but you cannot aspire as a partisan in that party to be the standard bearer, because probably you are still a child. So you have to wait until you get to 35, you get to 65 before you run. So my question here is, with the challenges facing the youth, with the youth age range being stretched from 15 to 35, is this what is impacting, old people leading these political parties, and we have that gap of young people actually aspiring to be leaders? I'm just wondering. Let me start with Mr. Sharif.
Yeah. So, but real quick, the issue with free education, I don't think it's a new concept. Under Tolbert, although some would disagree, there was a lot of effort there to expand educational opportunities, not just in the cities, but in the towns and villages, because I am a product of a village school, a very small town, Waplo Institute. So at the time, paymasters, at this time, the paymaster's role was very important. So the paymaster went from village to village with money, bag of money in the back of his trunk. and pay the teachers so that the teachers don't leave their classroom to go to Zwedru to cash their check. So these teachers, the paymasters came to the teacher's door, came to the principal's office, came on time. And I'm not talking about 6, 7, 9 months later under George Weah and some of the administration. They came on time to pay the teachers. So when that government was deposed, so now with the revolution, one of the things that came out of the revolution was they did away with the paymasters going to the towns and villages. So teachers were given checks to go to Zwedru to cash a check. So after every 3 months, you get 1 month check and you go to Zwedru. I'm citing Zwedru as an example because this is what I'm very familiar with. You know, that Kawiakan, Zwedru corridor. I'm very familiar with that whole corridor. So you go to Zwedru to cash your check, and you go to the Lebanese man, and you give the Lebanese man your check, and the Lebanese man says, okay, you're gonna have to purchase something. If you pay if their wage is $50, you're gonna have to purchase things that you don't even want, you don't have any utility for. So they're gonna give you these goods and then cash your check. So you go home, not only that you pay transportation from Kalipo to Zwedru, you're gonna pay your way back. And then now you're going home with a very short check. Your money now is nothing.
Mhm.
It's it was from the beginning, it was hands to mouth. Really now, the one in your hand can't even reach your mouth. So that's what happened. That's what the revolution brought. And so because of that, we're talking about rural to urban migration. So you have a lot of students. So what happened was these schools over time were degraded. The schools, the standards were really poor, degraded, and the good teachers. I remember one of my very good teachers who taught me the fundamentals of reading, Mr. Johnson Toll. Mr. Toll left the school, left Waplo Institute, and went to Zwedru. He taught at the Bishop Julie High School. He wanted to teach at the private school, even for less money, but the pay was consistent. So what you have is that these teachers left the public schools and went to the private schools. And then what happened was the schools were degraded, so the students move, right? Most of the students, where they go to the cities, they go to Zwedru. So that's the first part of the rural to urban migration. It's not just going to Monrovia. It's
Right.
going from places like Kawiakan to Zwedru. It's going from places like, maybe Saklapi to Saninkoli or to Ganta, maybe, right? So that's the first part we need to look at. And that needs to be addressed. That's not even talked about. Everybody's looking at Monrovia, but it's not just Monrovia. It's all these other urban centers where the rural to urban migration is really high, but it's unusually high in Monrovia. Monrovia does not have the facility to house everybody. So there needs to be a plan. Then there was a time in Liberia, I think people forget this. There were really parks. I'm talking about park where you have, where you have swings and seesaws and stuff like that where children can go play. Because I used to go to the park, right? So now we don't see that anymore.
Right.
So that is
so Mr. Sharif, the question now is: so what is the impact having on is this creating a leadership vacuum? Because if you look, as I was saying, the average age of president 62, and those that are the youth sinking behind trying to put to power are old people.
Yeah. Anyway.
So if we're talking about opportunities for young people, yes, but our Constitution did not prescribe what you can from 35 years old. If you're 35 years old, you are eligible to run for president. So the issue with age should not really be a factor when when you are selecting. My experience, I'm not talking about any other country, but with Liberia, the issue of age should not be an issue for Liberia. Why? Because I'm looking at the present experience. You have a relatively younger person who is a president and who doesn't know his way out. And again, people say, why are you critical of the CDC and this and that and the other? But the reality is, we're looking at this young man, right? He's still relatively speaking. That's what I'm saying. He's not young. Relatively speaking, a younger man who does not know his way around the leadership, who's partying a lot. So that troubles me. So part of me, and you talk about him dancing and singing the other time and doing all these different things. So he's forgetting that he has a country to run. So now we saw the difference. We saw when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was president. There were different things going on, but you saw that there was a serious person, okay, in charge. There was that seriousness to it. I mean, we can argue that. Okay, we can argue other things, but there's a seriousness to it. The office of the presidency was elevated, right? It now is degraded. So that part of it, I don't have a problem with the older generation stepping up to run for president. Where I have a problem is where the younger generation is not given a lot of opportunities. And Cole always mentioned about the cream rising to the top. So what is the opportunity given in these political organizations to young people? There's not very many opportunities given to them. And so that should answer why you have a lot of older people at the top of these political organizations.
Thank you. Let's go to the budget. I think there's a lot of
but Dennis, I just wanted to make a quick comment on this before we make a transition. Like what Sherry was saying on free education. I look on the third one, the Primary Education Act actually made primary education free for public school, basically. And that Primary Education Act was even expanded on around the under President Sirleaf. I think in the previous act, they said either 25% of the national budget should be spent on education. Okay. And I think the new Education Act for Liberia, actually added much more requirement to the Education Act. But it's not about what I'm talking about, what the government approach to free education in universities. Like all the community colleges across the country, they say free. I know in Nima I pay some children's school fee anyway, even though they say it's free. We pay like maybe $60 US. That's what they tell them. I pay that. They pay that towards other things. I'm okay to pay that because I know the Ministry of Finance is not giving Nima Community College anything other than the salary for teachers. Okay, I hope it's even coming on time. Because when I was at the university, I have to write on Facebook when Dr. Wicks was there to say, I need to get paid. I'm about to leave the country. Pay me, and people make fun out of it, but I needed to get paid because I put in my services. I needed to get whatever little the university promised me. I needed to get it. So I know primary education, there is a Primary Education Act for Liberia that actually makes primary education free. I'm talking about the government approach to tertiary institution to declare it free. That's not something that is done easily around even the most richest country. That's why even in the United States, primary education in public school is free. Because studies have shown that when kids have stronger foundation in primary education, the sky is the limit. That's why government must invest in quality primary education, not just to attract more students and you have less facility, less number of teachers, and that is what is happening in Liberia, and that is my concern.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. We are discussing youth and national development promises, and perils. At this time, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we're going to be right back. Again, this is Tough Talking Thursday. This is where we don't take any tabata. Now, I was talking about the budget, right? The 2020-2021 budget for youth and sport is around 4.4 million. It is expected to be 6.3 million in 2023. So given again, also the education ministry, which really caters to mainly youth. If you look at primary to tertiary education, that too is 5.6% of the budget. Probably education ministry is the largest, okay, and it has 5.6% of the budget. So given this allotment, right, it is small. I'm thinking of solutions now. What can civil society do, to support youth empowerment with our government maybe not prioritizing the needs of the youth? What are the options? Carl, let me start with you.
I mean, we as citizens have a responsibility to, first of all, elect and empower the right people to govern us. Secondly, even though we elect and empower people to govern us, we also have a civic duty and civic responsibility to our fellow citizens. I do see a lot of people doing things quietly. Brenda Brewer-Moore opened a school, and she's doing wonderful work with young people. Auntie Miata Fambula has a wonderful school. You've got people volunteer teaching at some of the community colleges, meaning they're not being paid. They're not on payroll, and they're teaching at some of the community colleges that were built over the last few years. One of the people that I have a lot of respect for is Mr. Jacob Benua in Nimba. There's a lot of people, private citizens, that are doing what they can to empower young people. My brother although he lives in Wisconsin, he and his family are doing extremely well. He makes sure that he creates agricultural programs for young people back home in our father's property, making sure that people are put to work, learning agricultural skills, self-sustenance skills to be able to sustain themselves and grow their own food. We're working on creating a digital library, the Liberian History Guild that I'm a part of, where we are taking our own resources and building a database for Liberian primary source documents, rare documents that are being kept at various libraries around the world, at various universities around the world, and museums around the world. We're digitizing these things and trying to put them into one database. And we are going to just give that to Liberia. So there are a lot of things that people can do. More people need to do more than just talk. I know a lot of people see us on social media, so people are just talking, but there's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes. Dr. Fangalo has a nonprofit where she goes, leaves her job, takes a leave of absence once a year, goes and teaches women about, healthy childbirth, delivery, and things. There's just too many Liberian people doing too much to mentor young people and to try to make our country a better place. And they're doing so with their own resources. I mean, your program, Dennis, is a prime example of trying to educate people, young people, at no cost to them, right? You're presenting people like Mohammed and Mr. Gonglo and others to share their thoughts and ideas with young people at no cost to them. These are powerful, impactful things that people are doing. So it's not all dire. And there are a lot of people that absolutely love Liberia and are trying to do the best they can to uplift the country and uplift fellow citizens. That being said, primary education, especially birth to 3 years old, and then primary education thereafter, extremely important. When children in the first 3 years of their life do not have proper nutrition, if they're exposed to lead, if they're exposed to mercury, if they're exposed to toxins, they can have permanent cognitive damage that will impair their ability to learn for the rest of their lives. This is not something that can be corrected. If you have this kind of damage in the first 3 years of life, you have not only stunted physical growth, you may also have stunted intellectual growth. This is frightening. And when I was in Liberia, I came to understand through World Health Organization that many of our young people, 0 to 3 years old, if they survive that age range, were going to be susceptible to having some of these impairments. And again, irreversible. If your growth is stunted, you will always be smaller than you were genetically designed to be, right? So you see a lot of people, they come to America, they're really small, they're born to children, the children end up being 6 feet, and they only 5'5". They say, but why are your children so big? It's because you had stunted growth. Physical development can be stunted, it cannot be reversed. The same thing with intellectual stunting, which is worse than physical stunting. You can be very small in stature and be brilliant and still be extremely productive in society. But if you have an intellectual impairment, irreversible, that affects you for the rest of your life. And I would be curious to know if these people at World Health Organization that had made these pronouncements back in 2010, if that is actually correct. It is 11 years later. I'm wondering how much of the problems that we're seeing is a result of these children that were, teenagers 10 years ago that are now getting into adulthood, that just simply do not have the cognitive ability to do things that we would want them to do. This is something that needs to be dealt with. Mental health issues need to be dealt with. Abuse, violence against young people. It isn't only about, education. It's also about safety. You can't learn if you're dead. You can't learn if you have cognitive impairments. So we have to look at these serious priorities. I don't hear any politicians really talking about this, with the exception of maybe Councillor Gunglo, Tawan Gunglo, who is one of the few people that has always talked about these things. It's not just because, he wants to run for office. These are things that I've heard Councillor Gunglo talk about over and over again. More people who think this way need to run for office and take leadership roles and be more vocal and be more visible. Instead, we have the spotlight put on people that do not really address the issues. They really don't talk about how great the problems are in great detail with understanding, right? Because you can't solve something you don't understand or you don't recognize exists. So the first thing I would like to see us do is discuss, I appreciate this show, Dennis. We have to talk about in detail what the issues are, not just, the people messed up, the education system bad. We have to explain exactly what is wrong. And then we can find a solution.
Thank you. I think it was last week when we had a show here and we're interviewing Dr. Samuel Toole. And he spoke of something that I want to bring to your attention about the complicity when it comes to Liberians, right? Where we see our presidents doing the wrong thing, and you have majority of the people openly in support of that, either to be a friend of the president or outright, indulge in that same bad behavior of the president. And I'll give you a few examples. I mean, starting with Tubman, who many believe could not even die. He had a PRO system, but yet the people openly show that they love him, even when he lied on people like Dr. Famule and the senior Famule. You will have people with petitioners say, yes, kill these people. Did go to everybody. They say, yes, go ahead and kill them. I remember when President Doe, when he was about to, when he actually lied on West and the rest of the people, about to kill them, he had a conference. And there were people among those people say, oh, yes, you can be frisky on your big brother, so they should die. Fast forward to today, we still see the same thing, the level of complicity in the Liberian society.
Yeah.
They were killing in Douala. okay, and the people are thought to be what we call Zogos. So it looked to me that, okay, are you saying that there is no outcry about the lives of these people because they are considered quote unquote Zogos,
Right.
and nobody cares about what happens? Look at the budget. You see a ministry like presidential affairs that have no purpose whatsoever. It's 20 million. Compare that to youth and sports. Compare that to other ministries. See what is
Right.
being done to our educational system. And yet, nobody is talking. We still see many of the people praise singing, dancing, and this did not just start. I mean, I give you the history from Tottenham and even beyond. I want you to tell me it, and you have the young population growing to the old population, right? So you see how these things are connected. The people that are young today are going to be old and still be singing and still be okay with the abuse, with the corruption, and the poor leadership. Talk to me about that as to
Yeah.
how this. So when we look at the youth today, what they are doing is just what we've been doing all the time, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Bungalow.
So that's the visual cycle nature of the problem in Liberia. Because many of the leaders today, they have their Nelson Mandela, they have their Kwame Nkrumah, right? They have their Barack Obama to learn from. So
They're our port.
yeah,
They're due to it. They're flying right.
we have our Pope who was a modest person. They have state power, so he didn't have the biggest microphone in the country. So many young, very few intellectual learn from his commitment, and I actually believe my older brother, Councillor Gongli, is one of those who actually learned from Abba Pope because he talked so much about him. I mean, in several different conversations. Even if you go to his office, you see quotation and Abba Pope picture there. He actually adore him a lot. He idolizes him a lot because he talks a lot about him. And he see himself like trying to live the life Abba Pope lived, not interested in material thing. So, but then that's the serious thing for me. Many of my colleagues, when I worked for a human rights organization in the 90s during Taylor era, my approach to things was sometimes my colleagues should say to the extreme. Like regarding this budget issue you raised, there is an education act that actually requires 25% of the national budget to be spent on education.
Mm-hmm.
We have civil society groups that work around sector issue like education. I would say if you have some of them listening to us, they should go together and actually sue the government and go to the Supreme Court to interpret what that act say, because it is the law of the land. The Education Act says 25% of the national budget should be spent on education.
Exactly.
If 5%, let them go to the court. They can file injunction
Yep.
on the Ministry of Finance not to spend money until the issue is addressed. Look, I share experience with you when I work at the Ministry of Labor. I mean, for all a reason, I'm not going to, call, any name. But
This is tough talking. Go ahead.
I had a situation where I was asked to review application for work permits, right? And I was reviewing it. And once they put me in charge, and I said, you know what? I am, because the law is broad that, and as expected, you don't expect the law to give you all the nitty-gritty on what should be done. But the law gives a broad picture, like you should grant work permit to non-Liberians if there is no such skill available in the country, right? So when I was asked to review, I said, okay, we'll reduce this in the paper. If you're applying for work permit, you should submit your resume. You should submit the industry, the company that you're working for, the registration of that company. It should be submitted also because your employer is applying for you. You should submit that. And there was a rationale that I was trying to get at, because by then we have the law that set aside 26 businesses exclusively for Liberians. And I'm one of those who I would call myself an ultra nationalist on that issue. I really feel strong that certain industry should just be for Liberian and non-Liberian should eventually run that. So eventually I found people into used clothing, used cars. I mean, things are part of the 26. And I had a list right by me. We're 5 on the committee. And I said, look, my recommendation as chair of this committee is the ministry should deny these people were permit. In fact, the Ministry of Commerce allow them to register this is the industry that they are not supposed to be in by law. I, as a public sector employee, I'm under obligation to uphold the law. So my responsibility is, in fact, the Justice Ministry should be involved to arrest these Lebanese people that they are not supposed to, what if they've done something illegal. If there's any remedy, is to register new business, not use clothes, not use car, or not into eggs making, blood making. Do you know some Lebanese people are into construction and all these things? And they are the one who get a government largest or getting renovation and all these stuff. And these are businesses by law. So
quickly,
so
Mr. Gonda.
I would say we should encourage Liberians to always fight for upholding our law. Let someone somewhere in Monrovia, it doesn't have to be a civil society organization. Let a Liberian who believe in the law go and take the education act, go to court and say, look, we're going to sue the executive for not putting 25% of the national budget in education.
And Mr. Sharif, there's even a provision in our constitution that says the constitution should be taught in all schools. Nobody does that, and we just sit there.
There's a lot. So when you talk about Liberia, you just mentioned one of it. So to me, because it wasn't done. So the premise that this government, I guess, is working on is because these things weren't done in the past, or because this wasn't done, so you're not going to do it. Who's going to step up? And I hate to say this, and I hear this all the time. Who's going to be the Jerry Rawlings of Liberia? I'm much rather say who's going to be the Nelson Mandela of Liberia. I mean, who's going to be something, right? I'm running out of comparison here, but who's going to be that person? It's not even hard. Who's going to step up? Who's going to be that leader? Who's going to step up to do the basic things? Again, I always go back in time, in history. There was a time, Dennis, that there was this school feeding program. Whether you like it or not, we used to laugh at the guys who were in one of these schools, and they used to feed cornmeal, and we called this school was AT Day, Anthony Tubman Day School. So these guys, they were giving cornmeals, and we would laugh at them. We sang, we said AT Day cornmeal eaters. But when I came of age, I realized, this wasn't bad after all, because I went to school in some of the schools that I attended. There are several schools. Some of the schools that I attended, I went to school with friends, kids who were hungry at times. So I shared with them. We ate together at recess. So that is a real issue for me, Dennis. So on top of what can government do, there needs to be an effort to reintroduce the school feeding program. Because you see that some kids don't go to school because they're out there in the farm helping mom and dad. They can't go to school because there's no food. How do you go to school? How do you study if you don't have any food? So food security has to be something that needs to be looked at on top of everything else. I don't know if the government has, if there will be any serious effort to do those things. One of the things that you mentioned is that what the adults are doing now is what kids years from now, 10, 20 years from now, are going to emulate. I was in at a press conference one time. I just, I I was around I was around the police headquarters. I think it was actually at the Information Ministry building. And Bacchus Matthews was the guest speaker of the Press Union of Liberia.
Mhm.
And Bacchus Matthews said something in that meeting with Kenneth Best. Also, the former Minister of Information, Reverend Emmanuel Boyer. Boyer was in that meeting, in that conference. So what Bacchus Matthews said was, there's no need for all of the things, mobilization and all of that, to paraphrase him. He said, if there's any coup, a coup could delay the 1991 elections because election was scheduled for 1991. And Bacchus Matthews said, coup could delay 1991 election. I was actually sitting there, right? And the next thing you know, Dennis, the streets were flooded with people with petition condemning Bacchus Matthews because Grady Allison went on air to say, this is what Bacchus Matthews just said. Bacchus Matthews should understand that we are not cocks and roaches. This is a legitimate government and we're not playing. So from the 13 counties, you have petitions going to the president condemning Bacchus Matthews. And from what I understand, Bacchus Matthews had to go to the executive mansion to have an audience with the president to say, I didn't mean to, this is not what I said. What I said is this. I didn't mean to say or to incite a coup d'etat. But people who are writing these petitions, they didn't even understand. If I weren't in that room, I would have said, he said it. Yes, Bacchus Matthews said this. But I was in the room. He must have spoken in a different language. But if he spoke in English, which he did, he said that coup could delay the 1991 election. I don't know if he was speaking in code. The government agency understood it. The national security agencies understood it differently than the rest of us. But that's one of the things that I never forgot. Like, why are these people out here in the street giving petition to the president, condemning Bacchus Matthews for saying the right thing? So you have these adults that kids are going to follow. So years later, you see that this petition, and it didn't start. It didn't start in the Doe era. It certainly didn't start in this era. It started way before, the Tubman era, even before Tubman. So, and if these are the role models that young people are going to follow, it's all about the petition. Whether or not the president is doing the right thing, they're going to give him petition. Whether or not their senator is doing the right thing for them in their constituency, in their district, they're going to go around giving petition, singing praises, and all of that. They're not voting for any kind of principle. They're not voting for Mr. X, Miss X, because of what that person platform is. Sometimes they're voting because this person gave them a bag of rice or a T-shirt. It is very sad what is going on because some of these people who are doing the dancing and beating the drums, at the end of the day, they never benefit. They never reap any rewards. Recently, I heard that the budget that was passed, these guys are getting paid gazillions of dollars. So they are paid very well at the expense of the poor and ordinary people. And unfortunately, among that demographic is young people.
Yeah. Dennis, if I could just quickly
hold on, Mr. Gonglo, because our time, we're way out of time. So
I
let me
know
go to
out of time, but let me just clarify Sherry historical knowledge on this one quickly. The speech that he talked about that Bacchus gave, that was in 1987. I was present. In fact, I was sitting on the floor. We were squashing on the floor because we're young students from the university. We didn't have seats, so we were on the floor. It was a press club of President of Liberia lecture series. A U.S. Congressman, Representative Congressman Floor was also present.
Quickly, Mr. Gonglo.
And basically, in my mind, what frightened the government was not just the cuckoo delay 1991 election, because Biko said in our speech that UPP will win and UPP will not be cheated. Only weak people can be cheated. Because there was military training already, and we used to go to UPP headquarters on the Oro, and we're watching the Corazon Aquino video from the Philippines, how the Fort Marcos attempt to hold on to power. And when Bagos and the security people had that information, so when Bagos actually said UPP will not be cheated, our vote will be protected, that was what frightened the government really. It was not a question of cuckoo delay.
Thank you.
Both of which was non-issues, right? They were really non-issues.
Right. And we can discuss that. I don't want us to kind of call. I want to bring you in on this question of complicity, and because we're talking national development here. I'm possibly here thinking, how can we develop in the midst of all these issues that we're talking about? But before that, just speak to these statistics. We have this age breakdown, and then it comes to, you said that earlier about under 15 being up to 43%, 15 to 29, 6%, 30 to 44, 17%. And if that is broken down in a male and female, that's what you have.
Yeah.
So speak to that briefly, and then you go into the question.
So, I mean, if you want to put the chart back up, one of the things that we talk about a lot in Liberia, let's look at the one with the gender separation. As human nature will have it, as the universe will have it, there's always balance. People think that there's, so many more women than men. If you ask the average Liberian person, they'll say, oh, there's for every one boy born, there's 5 girls born. This is clearly not true. This is not true. There's literally globally, except where you've had a catastrophe like war, where men are killed, and even our civil war, women were killed almost at the same rate as men. But we're equal in number, men and women, in the demographic. And the focus a lot of times ends up being on only young men, or more heavily on young men. And we got to rehabilitate young men, we got to help young men. They talk about Zogos, they're always hyper focused on the male population. I want everybody to understand that there's no gender disparity as far as numbers when you look at as we get older. So the population is basically equally divided, with a slightly higher number of men than women in Liberia, in the world for that matter. So that's important to know. That's important to understand, because the resources are heavily skewed towards boys, younger men and boys. And that's unfair to, the female population, which traditionally bears a bulk of the responsibility for nurturing the next generation. We talked about the way that we can correct some of these things. This is a drastic state of emergency. A responsible government would stop everything it's doing and hyper focus on revamping the curriculum. All of the countries that I have been to, I've lived in 3 countries, but all of the countries I've also been to have, with the exception of Liberia, have a very intentional and deliberate way of bringing young people, socializing young people into being good citizens, into being strong, productive citizens. And it starts in early childhood. Liberians are not raised with the type of self-esteem and love for their country that they should be raised with. If you talk to the average Liberian person, you mention anything, the first thing that comes out of their mouth about their country is anger, rage, and hatred. It's just like your parents. If you hate your parents, you hate yourself. If you hate your country, if you hate the nation that you were born in, your personal self-esteem and your personal outlook will also be affected. So you've got young people, if they put William Tubman's picture up, they get angry. They don't think of anything positive that this man did. Every one of our leaders has always been a monster. Our country has always been stupid. They say the worst possible things they can about everything in our history. They're taught nothing positive to hold on to to give them the courage and the ambition to lift the country themselves and move forward. They don't have a big future picture to work towards because everything that they're trained to think about their country is vile, despicable, and something to be, detested. And this is so unhealthy in developing citizens. In the United States, little Black children, little Native American children, little Asian children, little European descendant children are taught the same things. They are taught that, yes, our country did some bad things, but overall, these are the positives. They hyper-emphasize the positive attributes of their country, and they create within these children a desire to better improve their country and themselves and to work towards uplifting the United States. The same thing in Antigua, where I lived briefly, which is a Caribbean island. They do the exact same thing. They do the same thing in Asia. They do the same thing everywhere around the world. Liberia is the only place that I have lived where children are not taught systematically, deliberately, built into the curriculum from preschool through university, that their country is important, that their country is special, that they are blessed to be part of that country, and that they are responsible to carry their country to the next level. We don't do that. And until we do that, until we tell the young people that Liberia is worth fighting for, that you have a stake in this country, that you have a stake in the betterment of the country, until we do that for our children, give them something to hold on to, they will be useless to the world. They will be used by other countries to build their vision and not by Liberia. And that's exactly what's happening. So as soon as that you reach the pinnacle of your life, when you reached your potential, you then give your best years to a foreign country and not your own. If Liberia does not intentionally and deliberately reverse that problem, the next generation is going to be worse off than this one.
Thank you, Carl. Let's go to coming tomorrow on the Literary Hour. We're going to have the new face of Pan-Africanism. Jackie Sire and Prof. K. Moses Namwe will be bringing you the new face of Pan-Africanism on the Literary Hour. Then late tomorrow at 8 p.m., we're going to have the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. That's tomorrow, December 3. So we're going to be hosting Ms. Samrika Kate Zoka, an advocate for persons with disabilities, to talk to us about inclusion, empowerment, and awareness of persons with disabilities. Then on Saturday, we're going to have the draft national budget town hall meeting right here on Focus on Liberia. We're going to have economist Sam P. Jackson, Professor Larry Kennedy, Dr. Joel Keane, Mr. Alva Tokpa. They will be our guests, being hosted by Alice Coffey and Gabriel Carter. Don't forget, this Sunday, I will be hosting the CEO of Spoon Network, Mr. Stanton Witherspoon. You did not need to miss that. Come, it's Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. People are now calling it CEO on CEO, right here on Focus on Liberia. We're going to take a short break and go through our comments. And after the comments, our phone lines are open. The number is on the scrolling test so that you can join the discussion here at Focus on Liberia. That's what we do. And tonight is Tough Talking Thursday. We'll be right back.
We are.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
Let's go to our comments here. Samuel Sir Josiah, so true, my brother. The state has failed the young people in Liberia, and the country's future will continue to be in the hands of the foreigners. Critical voice, the system is set up in a way that is fostering the intellectual, moral, cultural, and psychological decline of our youth. The issue is urgent, but I'm shocked at how government after government, this issue is dealt with passively. George Dunbar grandson is agreeing with you here, Cole. I don't know exactly why. Mr. Sherry, you were the tour, the executive mentioned, they mentioned that Ellen and Boakai not renovate. Every year the government add $2 million on the budget, multiply that by 12, you can tell Joseph Boakai and President Weah who is corrupt. Jimmy Eastman, Africa has the youngest population in the world. 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 30. Such a high number of young people is an opportunity for growth, but only if these new generations are fully empowered to realize their best potential. Where is Liberia's budgetary focus in the face of this reality? Sad. Jackie Sayer, the entire educational system needs an overhaul. There should be national service where graduates work in rural areas to pay off tuition. More than 12 African countries have national service. This dependency where the student get free tuition and gives nothing back continues this cycle.
Excellent.
William Dunbar, yes, I agree with Mr. Gongolo that the present educational structure is designed to sway the youth toward any way they think they can improve their lot. Anthony here, our man here, say, Call, when are you running for president? Aku Joseph Coleman, to help you further, our people used to go and take credit from the Lebanese people, and 2/3 of the money was for them, and then remaining third was the Lebanese man has interest. I remember when those teachers came from Dodwakan to get their check in Greenville, when there is no money, or the guy called Sam Toffee will give them a bag of soap, take them goose. So you don't have the money, take the goose. Mm. Jackie again, why should the Ministry of Youth be aligned with sports? Why can November 29 not be National Day of Service instead of engaging in foolishness? And November 29 is the birthday of President Tubman, and Jackie calls that foolishness. Those are some of your comments. Let me get Martin Brown says, Dennis, statistics has proven that Liberian train on people that live in modest life. Liberia frown on the people that live modest life. They call you all sorts of names because you didn't steal from them and live a fabulous and extravagant life. That is sad. Jimmy, exactly, Call. We can't keep tearing down ourselves, leaders, and expect future generations to be encouraged, emboldened, and committed to national development. Jackie is asking all male panel, that's the panel on the draft national budget. We invited some people and some ladies and they turned that down. Abby Tyler, all that is being discussed here tonight is part of a functional, comprehensive healthcare plan. Somehow, healthcare practitioners seem to almost always not be invited to the table. Can't have a multidisciplinary approach and leave out a key discipline. Your reaction to all the comments. Let me start with Mr. Gonglo. You can pick one or two.
I mean, I think all of these comments are quite in place. I mean, the problem, the challenge we have in Liberia actually are multiple, and such that it's difficult to even focus on where to start. You know, I mean, like the last comment that healthcare is involved. It's true, because if you look at the life expectancy in Liberia, I mean, someone born today, if you're a male, you are expected to live 63 years old. And if you are female, you are expected to live 66 years old. I mean, 66 years. I mean, that's what you are. So it should be higher than that. I mean, we are the oldest independent country in Africa. We should even have better nutritional plan, better health education in the school system. Kids should be taught. We should have health educator in classroom from elementary to high school, so that by the time kids leave high school, they already know what to eat and what not to eat. Which food is not good for their health. I mean, they can go home, even in the rural area, and educate their parents home. I mean, we're not doing that. So there are many things we can do, but hey, in just 1 hour, 30 minutes, we can't even exhaust, we can't even focus on all of that. So yeah, that comment about not having health practitioner is in place, but again, agriculture person who can say, well, the growth of the economy is anchored on why we don't have us here. Somebody from the security sector could say, for investor to come, you need to have young people serve with diligence and commitment in the security sector. Why are you not having us here? So there's too many things that, so that's what I would say.
Mr. Sharif, quickly to our comments.
Yeah, quickly. So I don't want Cole to sidestep that question that Anthony asked. When is she running for president? So I'm hoping that in her response, she will respond to that. What I have to say, I absolutely agree with.
Don't put a sister in problem. She's not running anywhere.
What's that?
Don't put a sister in problem.
I agree with Jackie. National service is very important. So, yes, I for one believe that there should be free education from primary to university up to your first degree. And so if you graduate after your school, you should give some time to serve your country in the rural area where the needs are, in the field of agriculture, for example, in all these different areas, healthcare, in different areas, infrastructural development. So I think that, for the government, paying your tuition and fees and covering all the expenditure, you should give some time back to the government. The problem is everybody is in Monrovia.
Yeah.
Everybody is in Monrovia. Monrovia is really crowded. So what do you do to disincentivize the rural to urban migration that Gangwa talked about? That is the challenge. Even the Minister of Agriculture sitting in Monrovia. What is the Minister of Agriculture doing in Monrovia? And, riding around in luxury vehicle. That is not necessary. That ministry should be in a rural area. Or at the very least, the different assistant ministers, it should be in such a way that you have branches of the ministry in all these different counties.
Thank you. Carl, before you come, let me add two more comments here. Sam Odu said the budget should have allocated more funds for education, for free education from primary, junior to senior high schools, in order to keep the children out of the streets selling pepper color. Then, Mr. Jha, why your two learned panelists, Mr. Gonglo and Mr. Chevy, cannot speak about the funds given to the Salif government by the Norwegian government to handle the underprivileged children's situation. We saw what our neighbor Sierra Leone did with the same funds given to them by the Norwegian government. The current Zogo problem in our country that was created by President Taylor and President Salif was poorly handled by both of them, of the administration. It's about time we, and his ink ran out. Carl, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to run for office anywhere ever. I'm not a politician.
I'm disappointed.
Everyone doesn't have to run for office in order to serve their people. The second thing is the idea of always comparing Liberia to other countries is really, really, we have to, comparison is good for seeing, gauging where you are, but we have to understand our situation. There's a lot of things wrong with a lot of other countries that are not as wrong with Liberia. There's a lot of things wrong. Sierra Leone has a huge drug problem. So do we. Which one has a worse drug problem? Which country has more so-called Zogos? There's no comparison. Sierra Leone is struggling from the same ailments that we are. So this mythological thing that everybody else around us is doing so much better is just not true. You've got people pouring into Liberia with all of our problems from Guinea and Sierra Leone. There's more migration to Liberia than out of Liberia in the region, in the sub-region. Most Liberians, when they're leaving Liberia, they're going to a developed country. They're going somewhere far away. Our neighbors in the Mono River Union, there's a reason they're pouring into our country. We have so many more freedoms. We have so much more liberty. We have so much more tolerance for things. We complain about Liberia constantly, but the fact is religious tolerance. I mean, I know people say, we still have far more religious tolerance in our neighbors. You cannot compare Liberia to Ivory Coast. Do we have a long way to go to improve things? Absolutely. We have horrible conditions for women in Liberia, but if you compare Liberia to our neighboring countries, we are far more advanced. So I'm not saying that we don't have things to work on, we don't have room to improve, but I really don't like this comparison to us and our regional partners who, were colonized and had the benefits of slave labor for the first 50 to 100 years of their existence to build their cities and build their infrastructure that we didn't have, right? Because most of these things were built up by colonial powers with basically free labor. So they say, oh, look at Abidjan. Go Google how Abidjan was constructed and Google how these countries got to where they are. Do not, make unfair comparisons. That being said, we have a lot to work on. I don't want us to be like Abidjan, like Ivory Coast. I do not want Liberia to be like Sierra Leone. I do not want Liberia to be like Guinea. I want Liberia to manifest the destiny it was intended to manifest, which is African excellence, which is for us to be a shining star and an example for other people to emulate. And we have to work toward that. That's not going to happen overnight. We have to study our problems and we have to come together and find the solutions ourselves for ourselves. No international partners are going to solve this for us. No foreign money is going to solve this for us. These solutions exist within our hearts and our minds. With God on our side, we're going to be able to move this country forward. We have to believe it. I was raised to believe it. We need to raise our children to believe it. We need to teach each other to believe it. That is the only way we're going to transform the country. Start in your mindset. How do you think about yourself? How do you think about your country? If you can change that, then you will be able to change Liberia.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to be coming to our Tabata session. And after that, I will get your closing comments on the topic, because what I want us to nail home is how do we move forward with this problem. But before we start our Tabata session, I'm going to go to our sister, the retired Lieutenant Eva Young, who's going to be singing this song, Coat of Many Colors. I love this song.
Back through the years, I go wandering once again. Back to the seasons of my youth. I recall a bus arrest that someone gave us, and how my mama put the rest on use. There were reds of many colors. Every piece was small, and I didn't have a coat. It was way down in the fall. Mama sewed the rest together, so every piece with love. She made my coat of many colors that I was so proud of. As she sewed, she told a story from the Bible she had read about the coat of many colors. Joseph wore it, and she said, perhaps this coat will bring you good luck and happiness. And I just couldn't wait to wear it, and Mama blessed it with a kiss. My coat of many colors that my mama made for me. Made one it from red, but I wore it so proud. Although we had no money, I was rich as I could be. In my coat of many colors, my mama made wait for me. So with patches on my breeches, bossy both my shoes, in my coat a million colors, I hurry off to
I hope you paying her for using her music.
This is Focus on Liberian Tough Talking Thursday. By the way, Madam Eva Young was interviewed by Mr. Kwame Weeks on Lena Panorama, and I asked Kwame if I could play this song. I said, "Go right ahead." And the goal here is we want to get the retired lieutenant in studio to record those songs. But it's time, before we go to our final closing comments, let's go to the Tabata of the week. And one, maybe 45 seconds each as we go around the room to tell me your Tabata of the week. Let me start with Mr. Sharif.
Yeah, so once again, I'm going to go international, and I'm looking at Ethiopia. So the president of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, who won the Nobel Peace Prize about a year or so ago, along with the president of neighboring Eritrea, is engaged in a brutal civil war in the Tigray region, a situation that should have been settled. You know, Ethiopia has a lot of ethnic groups. This is a country of over 100 million people, lots of ethnic groups. So Ethiopia's problem can only be solved by including all of its ethnicities, all of its regions. Abiy Ahmed didn't do that. Abiy Ahmed last week dressed up in a military uniform. Of course, he says he's going to the battlefront to lead the troops. Well, we found out that the UAE and Turkey has been providing him drones to kill the people of Tigray. So come on, this is my Tabata of the week. He's not a military officer. They're committing brutality. They're committing murder in the Tigray region. And this is absolutely unacceptable. It's my Tabata of the week at the same time.
Cole, what's your Tabata of the week?
Oh my gosh, so many things. On today's front page Africa release.
Cole, your audio is bad. You can reset that.
Okay, come back.
Yeah, let me go to Mr. Gonglo.
Well, my Tabata would be of the week would be I saw President Weah touring the executive mansion renovation. And I listened to most of the government officials that gathered there. They said, hey, said he was putting money in the budget every budget year, and they didn't do anything about it. Now in 4 years, we are doing something about it. They try to distance themselves from either, even previous work done on that mansion renovation, and embrace all of the road work that they are launching around, which all of the grants, all of the loan agreements were basically signed by Sali administration. So they call President we are borrow medicine on those ones. When it comes to the executive mansion, they say, oh, Sali didn't do a good job. So it didn't make, that's my Tabata and my nonsense of the week.
Thank you. Cole, go ahead. Your Tabata of the week.
Better now?
No, it has not improved. Is that an attempt to skip the Tabata movement, or?
No, I'll usually put my earpiece in. I don't know what's going on with the audio.
Let's try the earpiece.
And come back.
Yeah, let's do that. My Tabata of the week, and I hope I'm not preemptive because I wanted to actually host Madam Agnes Taylor. Martha Washington is a former commissioner of the TRC, and after she wrote an article where she said, there were some people who were trying to malign one of those fighter for justice or the implementation of the TRC, Hassan Bility. So based on that article, she's being sued by Madam Agnes Taylor for defaming her character. So it looks because Agnes Taylor was put in jail because of her connection with the Liberian Civil War in the UK. She was later set free, and now she's suing. And this is not the first time that people who were accused or had link with the bloodbath in our country are now coming back to sue those who accused them or those who wrote anything about them. I remember George Bulley said he was accused by the lawmaker Dixon Sibo of killing his parents, or in Sino, and he threatened also to sue Dixon Sibo. So this whole idea of former warlords trying to sue civilians because maybe there's no war crimes code yet, to me, that's complete tabata. Call.
Okay, so my tabata for the week is this front page Africa, who passed, who failed for 2021 thing that they put out, and it just shows how poor the level of journalism is in Liberia. No country with real independent, curious minds would grade, these horribly failed institutional leaders A's, B, A minus, B. I mean, they're just arbitrarily giving grades. And this article is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with our country. This is not even mediocrity. This is sub-mediocrity. This is below low expectations. This is no expectations at all. This is looking as if, I have a 3-year-old child. My expectations of performance for my 3-year-old child are higher than Front Page Africa it has for government officials in our country. This is such a disgrace. They're giving Governance Commission an A minus, and the justification for that makes no sense whatsoever. It shows that they don't even know what the institutions are supposed to do, but they're grading them. It's like you send someone to take an exam in quantum physics and you're grading them on whether or not they wrote their name correctly. That is essentially what Front Page Africa has done. This is the greatest disappointment. They've long been disappointing me with their poor grammar, their poor write-ups, but this particular one strikes a chord with me because it is so disrespectful to the country to have one of the leading newspapers not even understand the functions of government and then have the audacity to try to grade government officials on something they don't understand to begin with. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. And as far as I'm concerned, that is the last time I read anything that comes out of that newspaper until something drastic happens to change my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and my guest, Madam Call Famula, she's our policy analyst here at Focus on Liberia. Mr. Mohammed Sharif, a product of WAPO Institute in Kilipo, Kanweken. He's our political analyst. And our guest here tonight is Mr. Kalebo Gonglo, a former official of the Liberian government at the Labor Ministry. The man can eat, drink, and sleep statistics. Now, let's go around the room and talk about give me your closing comments and what I want us to concentrate with everything that we've said, concerning the youth and national development. We want to develop. How do we move forward? You have 59 seconds each. Let me start with our guest, Mr. Gonglo.
Well, Dennis, thank you. This has been a very good show. I will always come back if you ask me to. But I think we should expand a little more on the question of youth. Some of the challenges facing them. We didn't have the time to exhaust all of the many things, even the issue of drug. I listened to a call was talking about Sierra Leone and Liberia. I think if we go in the drug situation in Liberia, you'll be shocked to know that I can argue that every single village in Liberia has a marijuana farm. I can argue that, and I will actually offer a challenge for anybody to say there is no marijuana farm in any village, because I've been in many places in Liberia as far back as 1999. I know what I'm talking about. So, I think by and large, for any country to develop, investment in quality skill training is important. Even in the United States, the guys who hold the economy, the guys who are the bedrock of the American economy are the technicians. The guys who come in your bathroom to fix a faucet, they get in your kitchen to fix the sink when it's leaking. The guys who come to work on your roof when there is snow, when there is leakage, These are the people, the handed people are the ones who hold the economy. Until many African countries, for that matter, Liberia, until Liberia can actually build as besides a matter of national priority, build TV institution across Liberia, and not just putting a building, but hiring people who have proven character, record. Go to international labor organization. They are very good at that. Let them bring the different level of technical training curriculum and train the teachers on that. We are going to be talking about this problem over and over.
Thank you. Thank you. Carl, before I bring you in here, I have a few things here for you. James Davis say, Carl, I want to be your student. Patrick said, my tabata of this week is to listen to Mr. Gonglo trying hard to defend the Salif government that squander all the funds given to them by donors in foreign countries. He is so biased in his analysis, man. And you can tell where Mr. Kennedy is leading. Carl, let me go to you on your closing comments.
Again, not giving credit. People have the strategy, it seems right now, is to make it look like the Salif government did nothing so that it will be a justification of this administration doing nothing. There's nothing that Mr. Gunglo said that is incorrect. It is true. All of the funds for the road projects that are being dedicated today were, brought about by the Salif administration.
Carl, if you don't mind, can I interrupt you a minute? Ms. Carl Formula, we are going to petition you come 2023. You will be a better president. Call Formula 2023 for better Liberia. Go ahead.
Yeah, y'all don't want to vote people. That's what they did to George Weah, and that's why he's here today. Y'all leave people alone. Y'all leave people alone. So, what I was trying to say is that things were not perfect, but two things can be true. There can be missed opportunities and squandered opportunities, and there can be where people made great strides. I know that President Salif's administration, as much as we like to criticize one another, made great improvements on so many levels. All the community colleges that were built, the dams, the roads. I mean, to sit and pretend that these things did not happen is only denying it to justify the lack of productivity that exists today. Instead of doing so, build upon it and carry the country to another level. Instead of pretending that nobody did anything right in the past, build upon it and carry the country to another level. Because you will one day be a past administration and be subject to criticism as well. It doesn't make any sense to do that. It's not honest. It's not truthful. I would like to see us as a people try to be positive and stop praise-singing politicians. Focus on ideologies and your thoughts and solutions, and the rest will follow. And that way, if the politicians that you want to push forward are not doing the right things, you can divorce yourself from that politician and stay firm on the principles. What principles should we be holding? The upliftment of Liberia and her people, all of her people. There is enough for all of us to rise together. There's enough for all of our children to prosper. I want every child in Liberia to have at least what my children have. That should be our goal. And no compromise on that.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, 59
Yes.
seconds.
Yes, Dennis. So while Carl was talking there, I signed up for the campaign. I don't know if you guys saw it. I signed up for the campaign. And nobody's going to take me off of that campaign now. 2023, you're going to have a lot of work on your hand to take me off of that campaign. But seriously, Dennis, one of the things that that I learned when I was in high school is this idea of self-help. I had a great. I went to a very good school. And for high school, and my principal was someone who believed in self-help. He was always doing different things. He was very innovative. Mr. William K. Reeves was very innovative. We were in all these different clubs, drama, spelling bee, and all the other ones, journalism club. One of the things that he did one year was He built, with the help of the students, of course, built a fish pond. And I thought that was very creative. So he built a fish pond. We built a fish pond, right on campus. And so that year's gala day, we didn't go to the market to buy fish. We grow fish in our pond. And that's what we ate for the gala day. I never saw anything like that in Soweto. It was so creative. It was so different from the norm. And then another thing was, when I was student leader of the school, Mr. Reeves at the time, we started an auditorium project. And my plan was to complete the auditorium project. And this man worked hard, day and night. We organized events to build that auditorium. Today, that auditorium is a testament of what people can do when they put their minds to it. Okay, there's a lot that Liberians can do. We were young people, teenagers. We built that auditorium. Today, Dennis, I can tell you I'm a proud product, okay, of Bishop Julie High School. I'm a proud product of Wapler Institute. I can say I'm proud because of that alone makes me a proud Liberian. During the war, when the Zoedru City Hall was destroyed, was badly damaged, the people of that town used that auditorium, for events. So this is what people can do. So in Liberia, the new Liberia, young people, everybody, older
20 seconds,
should be taught to work hard. We should stop being beggars. We should stop our leaders from coming to America to beg for money. Everything we need is there in Liberia. So everything, I'm not going to go into budgets and all of that, how they're paying themselves. I'm not going to do that tonight. Next time. But I'm saying everything that we need is in Liberia. We can do it. We can do it. That country can be developed by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. And I learned our speaker makes more money than Nancy Pelosi, the speaker here in the States.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yet we come to them to ask for handouts and to ask for other things. But thank you, Carl, Calebo, and Mohammed for tonight. Appreciate your time. I want to thank our viewers also for always watching Tough Talking Thursday right here on Focus on Liberia. We thank those who commented and those who keep watching, and even those who will watch later. And we also see that after this, people will be commenting on YouTube. Continue to bring your comments. We are reading them and we are taking notes. And keep notes of our shows tomorrow, and we're going to be right here. On that note, we want to conclude tonight with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Whether you are Zogos or non-Zogo, or whether you created the Zogo situation. And it should be noted that there are even Zogos in government. They are people, right? But now, the Zogo living in the graveyard is the one being singled out, is the one whose life is almost deemed worthless. He can be killed anytime with no accountability whatsoever. Yeah. So whatever the situation is, we are all Liberians, and it is incumbent upon all of us to do whatever it takes to make our country that beacon of hope again, that oasis in Africa, that sweet land of liberty. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Our father,